or Indian BPM industry to add more value to their clients by indulging big data into their business. And to do that, let me introduce the moderator of the session, Mr. Amardeep Devadason, Senior Vice President Operations, Donnelley. He heads two large business units of RRD with a range of professional certifications like digital marketing, social media strategy, and design thinking from Columbia University. He's also a certified leadership and an executive coach from CFI. He holds a lot of special interest into coaching high performing future leaders and women in leadership. He's always been the early and the enthusiastic adopter of digitalization. Amar also supports RRD's Innovation Lab and is greatly focused on building an open innovation ecosystem that even clients can leverage. So with that introduction, over to Amar to set the context and introduce the panel. Over to you, Amar.
Thank you very much, Guhan. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what I believe is going to be an interesting and very informative panel discussion this afternoon. So let me just dive right in. So what do we know? Big data is real. Big data is powerful. It's been said before that big data is the new oil, and that's all true. But what we need to remember also that it's not really new, right? Big data has been around for a very long time, but it's only now that all organizations, and not just the digital giants, every organization is seeking to harness the power of big data to unlock value. So for the purpose of today's discussion, what we're going to talk about is what big data means to the BPM industry, because that's essentially where all of us live and work at the moment. So where do we stand? Where do the opportunities lie? And what do we need to do to ensure that we as an industry, we as organizations are positioned for success? So to answer all questions that we might have and more, we've assembled a very, very powerful panel to help us understand the landscape, share some use cases, and connect all the dots. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel for the evening, starting with Vijayashree Natarajan. Vijayashree is SVP and Head of Technology at Omega Healthcare. Vijayashree's got more than 20 years of experience in the tech space, with a career built primarily in the healthcare, life sciences, and BFSI domains. She heads the tech team at Omega and is focused on the acceleration of accelerated adoption of technology and automation in the organization. Thank you for joining us, Vijayashree. Next up is Dr. Muthukumaran B, who is Practice Head Big Data and General Manager Training at HTC Global Services India Private Limited. Dr. Muthu is a master of many trades and a wearer of many hats. And there's very little he's not done during the course of his very successful career. An author, professor, cybersecurity expert, we're very fortunate to have him with us on the panel this evening. Welcome aboard, Dr. Muthu. And finally, Abhijay Datta is Vice President, Healthcare Digital Engineering at Sutherland Healthcare Solutions. Abhijay leads all the engineering teams in the healthcare digital practice. He is responsible for the healthcare domain-specific systems development, along with RPA, business intelligence, advanced analytics, and data engineering. So if you look at the entire spectrum of allied and adjacent technologies that can truly exploit the power of big data, we've got the exact panel for you lined up this afternoon. So in terms of format, what we're going to do is we're going to have each of the panelists spend a few minutes talking about certain components of this entire question. And then we'll ask them. So I'll have a few questions for them. So we'll allow them to speak, and then we'll ask some questions. And during the course of the webinar, you can keep pinging us your questions, and then we'll interject that into the discussions as we go along. So with that, I'm going to open today's proceedings by asking Abhijay Datta to take the mic and talk about the evolution of BPM companies. How clients have changed, how the landscapes has changed, and how the industry is adapting. And with that, I'll hand the mic over to Abhijay. Abhijay?
Thank you, Amar. So again, thank you, NASSCOM, for putting this together and allowing all of us to share our thoughts on the evolution of the BPM industry. So let me put together the slide. I'll share my screen. Just give me 1 second. So in terms of my introduction, I'll skip this, but I have also spent 20 years almost in healthcare. So what I'm going to talk in the next 10 to 12 minutes is not very specific to healthcare, but more about the BPM industry. And I have spent now 6 odd years in this industry, not by any means still a veteran, but have really caught this wave that we are going to talk about. So just to explain that what I have seen from inside this industry over the last 6 years, let me just open this conversation by just orienting you to the types of customers that I have seen. So you have type A customers who for the longest period of time have been the customers of the BPM industry. These are customers who are looking for mainly cost savings. They are expecting the service providers to just provide low-cost trained staff who logs into their systems, completes the work. This has been going on for since the call center wave, the BPO industry wave have been going on through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And here, India, by way of the happy accident that it is like 10 to 12 hours, time zone difference, a large English-speaking staff, fast internet really caught this wave. But again, this didn't. This actually has removed all the differentiation among the players right now. So customers' expectations have kept on rising. Now, when I joined the BPM industry, type B customers have already started coming in. These are the customers who are actually looking for service providers to bring in their own platforms, their own expertise, and they want the service providers to own the digital transformation. So they are really not looking for a quick savings of 10 or 20%. They're really looking at the expertise from the service providers. This is a very different game, and it required the BPM industry as a whole to mature up. It was not enough to get a lot of low-cost people and put them on the client side and say, hey, you got just start working whatever the client says. That is left, that zone is still there. That's left, of course, for new entrants, maybe players who are still not mature, but the maturity of the BPM industry is more moving towards serving the type B customers. And the contracting and everything that is now in BPM industry is also changing. You see that customers who have moved on, the type B customers, they are more towards outcomes driven pricing. They want the service providers to bring their technology and bake their technology in the pricing. They are really looking to hold the service provider accountable for business metrics. Contracts are much more, I call it skin in the game kind of contracts. So you have service providers who are expected to, at the transition time, to look at the process, look at the capability, maturity of the process, figure out the baseline metrics, and commit to improvements. And this is still not enough. Many customers, they want the service provider to continuously bring in innovation and continuous optimization. So it is not enough to commit to a set of metrics and just stick to that, right? I mean, every year, every 6 months, and contracts can be as aggressive as saying every 2 quarters, you have to improve the metrics by 10%, 5%. And this is not easy unless the service providers have invested heavily in technology. And if you look at, let's zoom in and just look at some of the implementations that today's BPM industry is facing. And nonetheless, Sutherland is at the thick of it. This is what I have been fortunate enough to catch the wave, as I say. So you have customers with fairly complex business processes. Their IT landscape can be complicated. Fortune 100 companies, they may have invested in technology 30 years back, 20 years back, and some of those technology they can't rip and replace. They decide to outsource a certain scope of the process, and they start looking for BPM companies who can help them. And they, as I say, they're not looking for companies to just provide bodies who can log into their systems and start working. They're looking for companies who bring in platforms, who bring in a suite of platforms, workflow, big data analytics, RPA, everything packaged up, which matches the process that they are trying to outsource. The evaluation of BPM companies by customers is a whole different ballgame. I cannot cover this in this meeting, in this session, But of course, there is an element of them diving into these platforms and trying to understand and evaluate whether this is the right fit for them. They know that this platform is going to get used by the staff of the BPM companies themselves. They may not have to kind of work on these platforms. It is for themselves, but still it's a big part of the evaluation process today to award business. Once the contracts and all are signed, you have the BPM companies in the transition process. You have them pull in a large chunk of the data from the customers' processes and systems into their platform suite. You are seeing how this is slowly moving towards why BPM companies need to invest in big data, why even analytics, right? I mean, now you're looking at a typical type B customer. They are comfortable in handing their data over to BPM companies' platform suites. At steady state, they are buying these outcomes. They are buying high quality and reliability, business continuity baked in, high throughput, good turnaround times, business insights, and as I said, they are looking for continuous innovation. And what in turn the BPM companies they have done is also over the last almost a decade and 7 to 8 years, they have continuously partnered with some of the biggest players, tech players. Some of them are, as you can recognize, some of them are big cloud providers, some of them are product players, some of them are integration experts. The BPM companies have continuously crafted partnerships, gold partnerships, platinum partnerships. At Sutherland, we have done exactly the same. And on top of that, organically grown their digital capabilities, be it the design studios, back office workflow systems, homegrown big data analytics platforms on which they have put data scientists, intelligent RPA, omnichannel contact center, a whole host of capabilities built on these technology platforms to create these platform suites for specific processes. As a customer, they have gotten abstracted out of this technological complexity. They buy outcomes. They don't care what the BPM companies are bringing in terms of how the BPM companies are assembling all this technology to provide the service. The BPM companies over the last 6-7 years, almost every major player right now in India has been pretty much focused on innovation, invested pretty deeply in technology. And they have also, given that how much data they are pulling in from the customer systems. And I'm from healthcare, but there are other sensitive industries which are pretty sensitive about their data. They have personal data, be it banking and several other regulation-heavy industries. They're expecting the BPM companies to invest in knowing all the regulations, cybersecurity laws, and everything, because they are now pulling in almost terabytes of data into their platforms. Now, just extending this a little bit more, if you think what's going on, if a BPM company early in the journey have invested in platforms, they get their first customer to use their platforms, but pretty soon they have customer 2, 3, 2, 4, 5, and you have 15, 20 customers now starting to use their platforms. And you have a ton of data. Often now you're talking hundreds of terabytes of data on a specific process now flowing into your platforms. This cannot be handled by traditional technologies anymore. You have to invest in big data infrastructure. You have to mine this data. And this has given us tremendous, as part of the BPM industry, this has given us tremendous insights to large data sets from multiple customers. And depending on the process that we are talking about, this data set can be in low terabytes to even 100 plus or even to the tune of 500, 600 terabytes we will pull in, depending on the process that we are actually serving for the customer. The necessity for big data cloud is understated. Everybody has to do this to stay competitive. The need for investing in world-class cybersecurity, because we are pulling in some of the most sensitive patient data into our cloud, BPM companies' cloud, and trying to serve the customers. We are analyzing the data ourselves to continuously optimize the process, to continuously hand back innovation to the customer. We are doing a lot of benchmarking studies ourselves, and all of this requires data to be secure. And that, as I said, I cannot speak in terms of how we get evaluated by customers, but one of the big things is security. Customers want to be sure that the data that they are sharing with the BPM companies are going to be secure, are going to be fairly isolated so that we don't mix up with other customers without their permission. There are use cases where customers are pretty open to sharing in a B2B context with other customers for getting some innovative business models. And which is my last point. So the BPM companies, they have also looked for use cases, and we have ourselves done also in the health plan space, in the health systems space, some specific use cases where we have found opportunities to actually take data from different customers and merge them and come up with new business models. And with that, the cost of the industry reduces. With that, you get high quality, and at the same time, the end customers, most of these customers are B2B customers, their end customers, I'm from healthcare, will be patients, doctors. They have a far better experience when you start merging the data sets and you give a unique experience to the end customer. And we have seen this in our daily life all the time, where so many platforms are coming up and they're saying that you are on a daily basis, you are interacting with so many service providers. You pay your mobile bills, you pay your credit card bills, you pay your gas bills, cable TV bills, and all that. Here's a platform where you can pay everything. You can track everything. This is the kind of experience that BPM companies, as they serve more B2B customers, they're striving to give to the end customers. They are seeing the data all flowing into their big data cloud, and they are able to now locate that patients, doctors, they are contracted with actually all health systems. If I have like 15 customers, I can see specific doctors are contracted with 10 of them. So I can actually design an experience which does not touch the doctor 10 times on behalf of 10 customers. I can design an experience which touches the doctor once, and I can collect information for all 10 of my customers. These kind of innovation is what the customers are looking for, what the industry is looking for from the BPM in the companies right now. And we are working towards that. Sutherland has brought up these business models. We have gone back to the lobbyists, we have gone back to the policymakers and tried to propose these kind of new business models to influence the industry in healthcare. And we can get some of that later in the discussion. And I just end my thought here of what is very exciting is what does it mean for the young talent who are trying to make a career in high tech. Many of us, when we started 20 years back, we never thought that the BPM industry would provide the best opportunities now in the areas of data science, machine learning, cloud, cybersecurity, you name it, even product managers, because there is so much of platform and product build that the BPM companies have taken on. There's a tremendous opportunity for product managers, experienced designers, and the people who work in design labs, design studios to have a career in BPM industry, to make some of the best platforms, to work on some of the high-end analytics, to work on blockchain and IoT new tech, to give better experience to the end customers. And of course, the good old software engineers, they are of course required as the glue for building all kinds of platforms. So very interesting times ahead, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the other panelists as the discussion unfolds. And back to you, Amar.
Thank you very much, Abhijay. That's a fascinating and very well reasoned synopsis of where we stand as an industry. Let me ask you a question though before we hand over to the others. Did the pandemic in any way accelerate the investments that the BPM companies are making in big data platforms, or slow it down? What's your view of that?
So for the pandemic, and it's an interesting question, Amar, thanks that you asked it. If we leave the customers for a second and we look inward and look at the working environment that the BPM companies had, that itself went through a tectonic shift. In a matter of a few months, the BPM companies were forced to send tens of thousands of their employees to home. And you have customers in the most sensitive industries who have given data to the BPO companies on the back of security assurance that, all my employees are working from office. I have the best security, physical security. I have I have CCTV cameras and whatnot, and managers monitoring them. suddenly you have 30, 40,000 employees back home. And this has been, the pandemic has created a huge amount of investments, at least within Sutherland. We have invested a lot in just bolstering our employee security, the whole workplace security from home. How do we use AI and ML and create some of the best employee monitoring environment without being too invasive? Giving the customers, all the customers from different industries that we serve, the assurance that this industry, it has adapted. BPM companies have adapted one more time. As 30, 40,000 employees have gone home, we have used the AI and ML and created some of the most secure workflows for the employees. So the way the employees are accessing the systems, it's getting logged. If there is any breach during the employees working, right? If they're working and if they are doing something which even remotely looking suspicious, real-time alerts are going out to the managers. And this is all happening real time to ensure that there is not a single breach as the workforce completely shifted home. And this has not been an easy thing. We have invested heavily over the last 2 to 3 months to get some of these capabilities up and running for our global workforce. And we are now going back to the customers and saying that, listen, I mean, these are going to stay. So if you have some of the other players who need these kind of capabilities, we are ready to help the industry as a whole.
That's very helpful. So what the pandemic did do was it forced a tectonic shift or a seismic shift in the way customers looked at data. And I guess in many ways you had to have the relationship trust at the customer and partner level. You also had to have a lot of trust at the employer-employee level to make that happen. So that's a valid point. I'm going to take something that you said and pose that question to Vijayashree, if I may, and that was about better patient experiences as a result of shared platforms. Now, I think that's probably much more important than it sounds when we first brought it up, right? Because here you are talking about designing a better patient experience through the sharing of data on a common industry platform, right, that you've talked about. So designing better patient experiences using big data and by sharing data. So Vijayashree, has that been your experience in Omega as well? Is that something that you would agree with?
Of course, yes, Amar. Thanks for the question. So it's actually, I mean, if you take the big transformation in the BPM industry, as Abhijay was pointing out, and the big impact on of the big data in the healthcare industry specifically, it has to be patient-centric, right? So the adoption of technology and the impact of big data, end of the day, if the patient is not, if it is not reaching the patient, right, then the whole industry, cannot survive. Definitely the standardization of records and the adoption of the digital data in the healthcare is going to make the patients, the care is going to be patient oriented, and it is going to create a convenience for the medical experience. End of the day, we all know, especially when it comes to human lives, when it comes to the healthcare, taking care of your health, what is more important is your convenience of the experience which you get out of these services, right? And such adoption of technologies is definitely going to make the experience more convenient rather than not complicating it and simplifying it. So that's all I feel. Definitely, it's going to be more inclined towards a patient-oriented care by adopting standardization of records, adoption of standard records, health records, EHR records across the providers, across the different hospitals, which is going to make the patient's life easier.
I think that's great, because here we're talking about an improved end user experience in what's
Correct.
normally a traditional B2B thinking. But we're talking about B2B to C and how that is resulting in a better experience. I think that's fascinating. A quick question before, because I think we're on a certain train of thought. So I want to ask Dr. Muthu a question. Do you see blockchain or distributed ledgers accelerating in any way data sharing by disparate agencies on a single platform?
Thank you, Amar. In fact, that's one of the key points in my topic. The future, when you look at 23, 22, 23, 24, the way the BPM industry is going to shape more from a manufacturing perspective, there's going to be a lot of data. And as Abhijay pointed out, it's going to be a lot of home-driven, work from home kind of a concept, which means data transparency, data confidentiality, and the data exchange has to be governed with big data, with the blockchains and distributed ledgers. More importantly, it's going to come out as smart contracts. So basically, smart contracts are likely to take over, especially in the manufacturing segment.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very helpful. So I think this is the perfect segue, because next up, I'm going to introduce all of us to Dr. Muthukumaran, who's practice head, big data and GM training in HTC. Dr. Muthu is a bit of a futurist, so we're going to ask him to talk about what he's going to see in 2023, in continuation of what he just said. And also, I think I'm going to say that we've talked about big data becoming a commodity, right? So maybe Dr. Muthu can shed some light on how he sees companies using big data to deliver these innovative solutions, and maybe ideally, like we talked about in healthcare, the end customer benefiting through a better experience. So with that, over to you, Dr. Muthu.
Thank you, Amar. Let me just share my screen. Give me a minute. Okay, so my presentation is limited to just a single slide, and I'm going to walk you through what is likely to happen in the next couple of years. One of my core areas of interest lies in designing, consulting, and coming up with new innovative solutions. So the way things are happening now, if you actually look at the big picture, earlier we were looking at a model where you create data, store data, process data, and create analytics. Whereas now it is create data and create analytics. Don't store the data, because we are looking at real time. So the model has actually taken a complete shift from the way earlier it was happening versus the way it is likely to happen in the future, which is the movement from the create, store, process, report format to create, provide analytics, and store the reports and store the data. So it's a complete shift. Now, why did this shift come up? This shift came up primarily because of your industry 4. So we are seeing this industry 4, which is up, and this is opened up the gates of your IoT gadgets. These IoT gadgets could be anything from a sensor to any of the gadgets which are going to give us data. So production level data, floor level data, and then robot data, RPA data. So a lot of data which is actually running the process that has to be captured, and we try to collect this at a higher plane, the start of the event and the stop of the event, the time difference between these events, a collection of these events to understand how the event is aggregating and how this event is collectively giving the overall response, and then look for the interconnectivity and the localized computing. So these computings are today coming up in terms of fog computing and edge computing. So we are trying to move a piece of knowledge, a piece of intelligence into the edges, whereby you can take some decisions pretty fast. So this is an emerging area which is shaping up the future of the production floors. The more we move towards the fog and edge kind of things, they actually help you to look at your IoT gadgets and the IoT platforms and the various types of IoT programming, IoT firmware, and inter-firmware communication, inter IoT gadget communications, and the latencies involved in all these. So it's a pretty big area. And then based on this, how could you actually go in a real time and do some process discovery, identify some process possibilities or process optimization possibilities. And then you move into the microservices because most of these services are container driven, basically fog and edge, which means container driven, and therefore you bring in microservices and APIs. These APIs are going to take care of what is happening on the floor level, and they are self-supporting. And whatever logs are generated here, they are also again data points which are coming up to our higher plane. So when you look at this plane, BPM AI and ML plane, we are trying to actually aggregate these events and then collect these events in terms of tasks and activities. So these tasks and activities are collected in terms of workflow, but it is not just workflow, it is workflow to big workflows, because it is not limited to one single process, it's a collection of processes. So like Abhijay just presented the future of the platform, these platforms are going to throw a lot of possibilities, a lot of data points, especially with the pandemic situation. It is not only these production floor data, it is also a couple of people operating from outside and people who are consuming this data from outside. Some of the consumers may be outside somewhere on the things, and this data also gets captured here. All these are governed in terms of some kind of contracts, self-distributed contracts, and we need to capture this data and put it in some documentation. These documentations are today coming out as distributed ledgers, and these distributed ledgers, you know, they are coming up in two formats, either real-time or it's offline kind of a ledger, where you have only the metadata available from the blockchains, and the data actually resides locally. So there are multiple possibilities which are just coming up. And of course, so finally, you are talking about the data privacy and data ownership. This is another massive element which is shaping up how these IoT gadgets are likely to shape up in the next couple of years. This whole platform is now emerging as PSS, the product service systems. It is no more IT infra. It is now coming out in a different name called the product service systems. So what we mean by this, we are actually trying to look at systems of products, services, infrastructure, and network collectively working together. So it's no more a single entry, single item which is present here. It's a collection of such items which actually delivers the service. And that's where you are trying to come up with a product manager. It's talking about product manager opportunities. So these product manager opportunities are coming up because you are looking at products, and these products in turn depends on the gadgets. And these gadgets are collectively going to give, deliver a particular service which is contracted, and you monitor the contract here, and you record the details in your distributed ledgers for transparency and openness. So this whole platform, as it stands, is generating what you call as real-time data analytics, as well as floor-level intelligence. And what is the uniqueness of getting big data and blockchain together is you are introducing a new concept, which is security by design. When you get into the blockchain, because the data is protected, your basic compliances are met. No personal data, no PII data is going to be sent out because you're going by blockchain security by design. And since these gadgets are likely to connect and they can exchange information and exchange data, you're talking about blockchain-based infrastructure, which has to be a part of the contract. So if there is an outage, if there is an excess burst of data which is moving in, then we need the infrastructure to automatically expand elastically. And that is possible when you move into your smart contracts, where I use a smart buffer, which is going to have a soft limit and a hard limit, whereby you expand on demand and contract on demand, which is similar to any of the cloud applications today. And that's exactly where you bring in your smart contracts. So basically, what are we trying at this floor? We are trying to actually understand the design and implement our concepts here at a floor level, so that we aggregate them and move them to the next layer, which is your BPM layer. And this BPM layer, once it has picking up a particular layer, it has to move through your AI and ML. So we try to associate all these workflows in whatever is the fashion, whatever is the order according to the BPM requirements. And these collections are put through your AI and ML models. So these models again are moved from offline studies to online. And as we all know that the big data, which has come up with a Lambda architecture. So the Lambda architecture is your streaming architecture, streaming platform. And the streaming platform actually helps you to come up with your streaming analytics with the CEP, complex event processing. So we are talking about data which is moving as with the same speed. And when your data is moving at some X speed, you have to process them in the same speed or nearby speed. And that is possible only when you move into your big data Lambda architecture kind of designs. And you have a complex collection of gateways. These gateways are going to stream the data through multiple paths. Some of the core technology in the space, you talk about the different types of streaming platforms like your NiFi or most of the Apache suites which are coming up. And from the data perspective, it is going to be your Hadoop and HDFS and your data collections bundled into the same block. So this becomes your black box. So this black box is a place where you look for new innovations, and these innovations are actually helping us to optimize the business, optimize the process, optimize the cash flow, so many things which go with it. And then when I move to the next layer, the layer above that, you're talking about the process mining. So whatever happens here, you see the data which is coming out, you see the analytics which is being thrown out in real time, and this analytics is picked up here. So the analytics could be in different domains. Basically, you try to monitor the business activities. So one of the core areas or the primary areas, we talk about business activity monitoring to figure out where the gaps are, where there is a lag, and where there is an issue, the problems. So this is one area which is actually shaping up. The other areas, you today talk about the vibrational analytics. That's a very important area which is just emerging in a big way across the globe. So when I say vibrational analytics, I'm talking about different types of vibrations, because you're when you go down, just drill down from here to the floor, you're talking about machineries, you're talking about automation, you're talking about robots, you're talking about robotic sensors. Those sensors are throwing you some data, and what is the reliability of the data? So is the machine actually functioning, and is there a downtime for the machine? And what is the functional health of the machine? What is the your actual strength and health of the machines? So those kind of data is actually analyzed. You get vibrational analytics, thermal analytics, and acoustic analytics, which is coming up in space. So acoustic analytics talks about the various noise which is generated here in this flow, and that's going to tell me, give me an update on how my equipments are actually functioning, and is my equipment in the right shape, and if there is a downtime, when should I opt for a downtime of predictive maintenance? So it's throwing a lot of excellent insight into what is happening at this floor, because most of these equipments could be your mechatronics kind of equipments. It could also be some sensor driven. It could be your robotic arms with motors. So all this data is actually collected here for vibrational analytics. And then we have this small swarm intelligence prediction. That's another beautiful area which is just coming up. It's swarm intelligence in the sense, let us go back and understand the meaning of what is swarm. Swarm behavior is separation, alignment, and cohesion. So whenever the process is running individually, you do not get the collective intelligence. If you recall Abhijit's discussion, he was talking about with permission, consolidating the data from different vendors, consolidating the data from different vendors so that you come up with different use cases. And these use cases in turn help the customers bring down their cost and do a better delivery. So that is exactly what we mean by swarm intelligence here. So when you say swarm intelligence, I'm going to collect the data and the average performance of each chain, each business process, and what is the process level intelligence and individual element level intelligence across shift, across day, across year, across organizations, and then try to figure out which is moving together and which is not moving together. Isolate those which are not moving together and try to do course correction there, so that the swarm is moving as a single block. The more it is moving a single block, everybody stands to gain, because you're looking at overall optimization in terms of process, in terms of machinery, in terms of human resource, in terms of all the components which are going into this production flow, which is your swarm intelligence. And then you get into your fog and edge computing. Some of these terminologies which are just shaping up in the last 1.5 years. This is pushing the intelligence which is emerging here in this space to the production floor at a micro level, where you are looking at the microservices and the intelligence bundled in the space. This is actually a costly affair compared to what is done here, because you are expecting a lot of things to happen at the floor level or at the edge level. So to ensure that we are optimizing at this space, we look for analytics in this space. So the computational analytics, and this is one area which is already picked up in the market, where we talk about your computational payments. So it's no more hiring hardware, no more hiring anything. It's like functional computation, and you pay only for computation. Another area which is shaping up on how things are likely to get rearranged in the near future. And of course, finally, we move to the sensor processing and analytics. This is another area which is of interest to everybody, because we are looking at sensor benchmarking, and then sensor related optimizations. So this is another area which is actually shaping up. Finally, we are talking about ambidextrous BPM. Earlier, the BPM is only rearrangement and process rearrangement, but it is no more limited only to that. It is also a component. You're talking about these infrastructure which is brought in as a component into BPM, which is your ambidextrous BPM part. So what is emerging collectively? Collectively, we could see that the next gen BPM framework is moving towards Industry 4, because you're talking about IoTs. It also talks about the compliance and the requirements on compliance, which is your different types of compliance across the globe, like, for example, GDPR. And that is addressed in terms of your blockchains and the different types of smart contracts. And then you also talk about the security frameworks, because security at the end of the day is more critical. So the entire gamut of this platform, it has to be bundled as a part of your security structure. And when I say security, again, this is moved back into the streaming block. So you're talking about the security streaming platforms, and then streaming analytics, and then your security dashboard analytics in terms of core engines, and core engines, CP engines. So all these collectively are moving towards your security framework. So overall, what we see here is we are supposed to move into your process optimization, improvement, start from the level below. We're talking about process design, which is happening at this level, process implementation happening at this level, and process optimization and improvement happening at this level, your feedback loops. So all these are again interconnected back to levels 1 up and 1 below, which means you are able to go for a proper feedback to do course corrections, and then thereby minimize wastages. So overall, by 2022-23, you are now looking at analytics process management emerging. Earlier it is business process management. Slowly it is migrating towards analytics process management, APM. And APM is actually an upper umbrella which actually governs about the functionality, which is your BPM and the variations, and your provenance, which controls the overall gamut of picture. So this is what I want to leave with you. And thank you, NASSCOM, and thank you the panel members for having allowed me to share my views. Over to you, Amar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muthu. You said something that I think is important, and I'm going to pass that question on to Abhijay. Abhijay, Dr. Muthu talked about real-time analytics, right? And context, and it's something we've talked about in the past, contextual analytics and real-time analytics. Do you see a point in the future where big data and analytics will collide? And if indeed, so we either have a collision and that's an inflection point, or whether that gets covered under an overall new governance model or new governance and umbrella, where you have data governance, you have data and analytics workflows, and there's a broader umbrella structure to govern it. How do you think, what direction do you think that will take?
Yeah, I think it's if I have a crystal ball. First of all, contextual analytics and embedded analytics is the way to go. Again, for the longest period of my time, when we thought of analytics, we were always thinking that you take the data out, like Dr. Muthu was saying, that's all old now. You take the data out, you store it somewhere, you do analytics and reporting on the side. But those days are going away, and we are getting spoiled by the Amazons and other B2C systems out there, the internet systems, where you complete a transaction, you immediately go to the orders page to see whether your transaction got logged or not, right? You cannot wait for Amazon to tell you that this is a nightly batch process, right? You go to orders and this will be only visible tomorrow. That those days are gone. And if I bring it back to the context of the BPM industry, as we are investing in heavy workflows, right? And be it any domain, be it healthcare to banking, any domain, as we invest in workflows, analytics, which was actually more in terms of reporting and data science on the side, is getting now absorbed into the workflow. So at the time of working, right, you are getting contextual analytics at every step when you're trying to click. You are getting intelligence right then and there. And if the intelligence is true and 100% right, you are actually having bots do those transactions. Why present something which is 100% true, right? You would rather have those queued up for bots. This kind of marriage of big data, analytics, getting real time into contextual workflows, and then invoking bots where you have a fair bit of accuracy or a fair bit of predictability of the events, you actually deploy bots. In terms of governance, I just want to say one thing, and that is a challenge we all face. As I lead the digital teams within Sutherland and we build platforms, we have to also be respectful for the emerging wave of what I call citizen data scientists. Everybody needs access to data and do their own analysis, right? The more I try to govern, I find out that, you know what, this is not going to work. So you need to give more access to self-service BI, self-service data science to business teams. I think if those who are on the crux of building platforms and getting data together out of from the platforms and serving it up to the business, at least the insights mining part, I think there needs to be a level of governance at the data layer, but you allow the business to come up with their own insights. And the trick would be to take those insights, productize it, and push it back into the workflow for contextual analytics. This cycle is critical.
So that could be the foundations of a business model that is based on embedded analytics and contextual analytics, right?
Correct.
But then how do you address look, we all understand the citizen data scientist, the citizen journalist, the citizen weather blogger, this is the day of the citizen activist, right? Let's not feed ourselves. But it is these very citizen scientists that pose the greatest risks, right? So when we were talking on the chat window, one of our attendees has asked the question, what kind of healthcare data is going to be shared across these common platforms, right? So how would you address that risk factor of, you know, the citizen scientists? Could they cause more harm than good?
This is purely my opinion. For somebody who has seen the evolution from encyclopedia to Wikipedia and going for everything to Wikipedia and just trusting it, we know that there are false information out there and there are narrative building happening all the time in Wikipedia. But again, it has taken a large part of our mind share. I truly believe that within large companies, they would struggle to have small analytics teams owning analytics, owning insights, and trying to centralize it. I think it's incredibly difficult. There is a risk for sure that as you try to democratize the analytics and you allow business to do their own insights mining and go in different directions and try to take control of the workflow, But at the same time, I personally believe that there is some room for strong leadership, and governance to be brought forth so that there is some level of quality adherence for whoever coming up with insights. Companies which are able to do this instead of like just letting it kind of go completely wild west inside the company, right? With everybody doing their own little thing, and you suddenly have 100 small data applications running in everybody's desktop without getting there and still empowering the business to find out insights. There's a balance, and I'm saying there's a room for leadership. There's no right answer to this thing. I mean, I'm living this every day where my business wants more insights, and the only way is to just give them access to the data and see what you can do.
I think that's a very diplomatic answer to what's the equivalent of 10 years ago in the BPM industry, right? Everyone writing a macro to fix a very, very simple problem. It's the same funda, right? So very quickly, before I'm going to ask Vijayashree to spend some time talking, I'm going to ask Dr. Muthu a question. Question being that there was a recent Gartner study, and the Gartner study essentially is very much in line with what Abhijay just spoke about. And it says that data sharing is a business necessity to accelerate digital business models. So would you care to maybe just in very 3 or 4 lines, just comment upon how do you address risks in this lead with the platform BPM scenario?
The question is for
you, sir, Dr. Muthu.
Oh, okay. Okay, purely from a security standpoint, there are methodologies and limitations. I would only point it in that direction because PII data cannot be shared. Anything which is pointing to individuals cannot be shared. But anything which is public, anyhow, it is already there, and anyhow, there are a lot of visibilities. I can quote a couple of examples also here because whatever data is currently available, I mean, it's anybody's game today. Just go to LinkedIn, you are able to come up with social intelligence and open intelligence. Like what Abhijay pointed out, your consumer or citizen-based analytics is also there in a big way. So what is important here is only the PII data, and the PII data needs to be protected. So once you are taking care of that, rest is simple. Okay. Should be able to handle it.
So you are seeing it as something that could potentially. So that's an interesting perspective. We'll come back to that. So now I'm going to ask Vijayashree to take the mic and provide her perspective. And actually, when we were talking about this panel, right, Vijayashree said that she's going to look at it from healthcare standpoint, and she's going to look at it from 3 lenses: the patient lens, the payer lens, and the provider lens. So with that, I'll hand over to Vijayashree. Over to you.
Hey, thanks, Amar. Hope you all can see my screen, right? So pretty much we have covered, by the previous earlier speakers, both Abhijay and Dr. Muthukumaran, the evolution of BPM, beautiful explanation about Abhijay, how we have evolved from the BPM industry and how the future is going to be for the big data. So what I would like to cover, being a representative from the Omega Healthcare, I would like to cover the impact of big data. All of us know the impact created by big data is actually huge, right? But when it comes to healthcare, you can actually see significant values of this big data, right? Because as I said earlier, it has a human touch. It talks about, our own health. So the value created by big data is huge, and how we are actually leveraging the big data impact and what you can actually see in the last decade, 5 to 10 years, maybe. We are seeing good. We are able to leverage the impact of big data in all across all industries, not necessarily the healthcare industry. In fact, if you take any industry report, the healthcare data is expected to double every 73 days, right? That's what the industry report says. A huge amount of data, is getting available, especially in the healthcare domain. And what is key for us to leverage or see the impact of big data is the availability of your digital data. And we have talked enough in by the other speakers as well. They were touched upon the importance of having the digital data, right? And the backbone technologies of these big data and the analytics is actually your artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and all these algorithms and these technologies we are not hearing, only recently. It has been there for several decades before, right? But what is really helping us in seeing the big impact of these big data and applying the advancement of technologies, in fact, I should say, the advancement of the infrastructure and the hardware. Because several decades back in 1950s, 1960s, we would have needed a supercomputer to process a good amount of data, and for all the algorithms what we are talking about now, all these machine learning, deep learning, which are all data driven, the advancement of hardware and the processing speed, be it your processor and your the memory, you actually have an high-end configuration processor and storage in the form of mobile device in each of our hands, right? That's the era we are all living in. So the advancement of hardware and the infrastructure becoming cost effective, and affordability of these hardware and the is actually helping the whole revolution in the technologies space. Though all these machine learning, artificial intelligence, the scientists, the data scientists, all the ML engineers, data scientists, they have been doing research for several years. The big impact we have started seeing in the recent last, I would say 5 to 10 years, that is because of the advancement of your hardware being affordable, in any industry. So with the right infrastructure available with the analytics tools and the workflow solutions, the insights provided by the big data is actually reaching each and every domain. More automated workflow solutions, as Abhijay was talking about, the workflow solutions come into play only if your underlying IT business applications, if it is not taking care of your straight through processing or you're taking care of your business process, you may have to add an additional workflow tool on top of your business platform in order to complement the portions that would have been disconnected in the business process world. In the BPM industry, whoever have spent time in the BPM industry, we know how much ever we talk about the advancement of the IT applications. What comes to the BPM industry, it's all the disconnected process or the exceptions that are not being processed by your underlying applications, right? So the workflow tools actually become the connecting dots between the disconnects in your underlying applications, and more automated workflow solutions is going to help us more in getting the digital data, which is going to really help us in seeing the impact of the big data analytics in any industry, and especially in the healthcare industry. And the application of these analytics, the outcome is going to be potentially, life-saving, preventing, pandemics, curing diseases. Though the research and the applicability of analytics is going to be really life-saving when it comes to healthcare and the life sciences domain. And as I said, because the workflow solutions become the connecting dots on the disconnecting parts of your underlying business applications, more automated BPM solutions in the form of bots or in the form of platform-based automation. And what is more important is you need to reimagine and standardize the process where you are bringing in human and bots, and more these automated solutions, bots coming into play. We also need to reimagine the process the way we would have been, working on a particular business process in the absence of these technologies or these analytic solutions, right? In order to get the real insights of these analytic solutions and all these automated solutions, we may have to tweak or reimagine the process so that you get the best of everything. And the underlying the technologies need to be leveraged. Data modernization, cloud-based solutions for taking care of all your storage of data, and more moving towards a data-driven enterprise, which will help you to drive the taking key business decisions, where the data is actually helping you to define the decision. So some of the best practices like automated workflow solutions and the process reimagination to bring in the best of technologies and make use of analytics. Embedding analytics, as Abhijay and Dr. Muthukumaran was pointing out, embedding analytics, there is a concept of real-time analytics, and you don't need to wait for seeing your results as an separate standalone solution. How you can actually get it out of your platform. I would like to touch upon the big data trends. as Samar was pointing out, there are three major stakeholders in the healthcare industry, right? The patients, the payers, the insurance companies, and the providers, the hospitals, which is actually giving the hospitals. So I just take a step back to explain the impact of this big data and the analytics for each of these stakeholders. And let me start with the patients, where most of us can actually connect us with the with this stakeholder, right? So as I was answering to Amar's question, what is important for a patient is actually a patient-oriented care, right? So when we are expecting some service from a provider, and when we are, what is important for us, is to give the service, to get the service where we become the center of the overall process, right? Because end of the day, you are the one who is going to get the service out of the provider, and so. For a patient, what is really important is actually moving towards a patient-oriented care, and in fact, the US actually what you can see here is that $30 billion is actually on the US side, US market, where they have actually spent around 30 billion for the adoption of EHR. So, what is an advantage of adoption of EHR? The electronic health records by the hospitals, it becomes easily available to be shared across the providers. So when you're going for a particular care, you need not be going to a specific hospital, and there could be different services which we would like to leverage from different hospitals. So the adoption of the electronic health records ensure that the records are actually easily shared across the provider. It is going to help in reducing the cost of operations for the providers as well, and it becomes a very standardized data available across different providers, and this will actually help in creating predictive analytics to diagnose the health issues and more inclined towards providing your patient-oriented care. The other biggest trend, what is happening, and many of us would have realized even in India market, the telemedicine, right? Before the pandemic, probably we would not have preferred for such a kind of service, but all of us were pushed to even to leverage such a service. Telemedicine, which is the current market, is actually around 31.8 billion, which is expected to grow beyond 100 and beyond 500 by 2027, right? And what is very important in the telemedicine is actually you need to utilize the data-driven insights for providing the better care, because you are not seeing the patients in person. It is all over a video call, and where it is not an in-person, and what is going to play a major role for the doctor or the clinic to provide the respective service is actually based on the data which they are having, right? So the utilization of data-driven insights plays a major role when it comes to telemedicine, and this actually opens up a new paradigm, which is called as health informatics. And as Dr. Muthukumar was actually talking about the advancement in the Internet of Things, IoT, it plays a major role, and the convergence of IoT and the telemedicine in the form of smart hospitals. And every home now we are equipping ourselves with the smartwatch for monitoring our health. It actually gives us some records. So when you are actually connecting all these devices from whatever your home patient care, from your smart hospitals and a smart operation theaters and a smart healthcare monitoring, and through your watches or your mobile phones. And all these devices are going to give you more and more amount of data, which opens up a new paradigm called your health informatics, right? This becomes the backbone of your telemedicine, and the backbone of this health informatics is nothing but your big data and your cloud computing and the analytics. So more and more data-driven insights are being used by the providers or the doctors who are actually giving the consulting service over a telemedicine, and the data becomes the backbone. So this is these two aspects I would like to cover. I wanted to cover as a biggest big data trend which I have seen as a patient, as a stakeholder. Moving on to the payers. For a payer, for an insurance person, the biggest big data impact or the advantage which they can leverage, one is for reducing your fraud, right? There could be a number of fraudulent claim cases where the payers were actually literally struggling to identify the right to reduce the fraud. This is not possible without the analysis of your prehistoric data, claims data, which is actually helping them a lot. to reduce the fraud, because all your analytics which are applied on your historical claims data is going to help them to identify the pattern of all these frauds. Can definitely have a pattern, and you can derive a pattern by looking at or analyzing the data or the historic data. The next impact, again, it is more related to the patient oriented care, whereas from the payer point of view, it is more of value-based care, right? So 80% of the insurance companies, they have one or more value-based solutions, right? And analytics and the AI is the crux of driving such value-based services. If you need to provide some service which is based on value, you need to have insights around what kind of value, if added to their payer policy, is going to help them in attracting more members, right? So that is another big impact which the payers are actually leveraging the big data analytics to improve their business. Last, not the least, the understanding the populations, right? The population analytics is a big trend, especially for the Medicare and Medicaid industry in the US, where they need to understand the population, and they need to have good analytic insights about the investment on their Medicare policies, right? And the risk stratification, and they need to identify the care gaps, that will going to help them in driving them the right decision to invest more on the right area, right? So, see, understanding population, and of course, that is again not possible without the big data analytics, where the payer can actually spend their money, more smartly. Moving on to the last one, the provider space, right? For a provider space, what is the outcome for a provider? And obviously, improving anything to improve their revenue cycle management is going to be the benefit for the providers, right? The RCM market is actually very huge. It's going to reach around 250+ billion by 2027, right? So the market is huge. And for any provider, for them to invest on the right areas and to take right business decisions, obviously they have to improve their revenue cycle, and they're actually leveraging or the betting on the big data analytics like any other stakeholder. And again, that is going to be possible only by adopting more automated BPM solutions, right? So in the revenue cycle, the complete end-to-end life cycle, the provider has to be able to monitor end-to-end the revenue performance with the right turnkey dashboards and an integrated reporting, right? And if you actually take the RCM world, as I said, especially in the BPM context, there could be many disconnected, processes behind. And for them to finally derive how to improve their collections or how to improve their business, because the underlying applications are a little bit disconnected, because it is going to touch upon payers, it is going to touch upon multiple, providers, and multiple calls in between. So it is not as straightforward as we think, like in any other, BPM industry. So for them to see the end outcome or improve their collections or their revenue, we need to bring in more and more automated workflow solutions. And by combining your financial and the clinical intelligence, which you're going to get out of these workflow solutions, that is how the RCM providers are going to, make more cost-effective decisions in their process. I just take a few quick examples. What Omega Healthcare, being the leading RCM, healthcare provider space, service provider. So we focus on building, as I said, because of the underlying applications being disconnected in certain ways. We focus on building more automated workflow solutions. For example, we do have a couple of flagship products as part of our organization. One is on the payment posting, where it actually helps, it is an AI-based OCR technology conversion of your UOB images to your 835 payment transaction. This basically helps in posting the payment in the absence of such an automated workflow. The manual operator would have been, reading the image, UOB image, and doing the posting, right? So by having an automated workflow solution, one, it improves efficiency. Overall, the productivity is improved, the accuracy is improved. And also you get the digital data created, right? So now you have the digital data created, which will actually help me in applying the analytic solutions or deriving the insights of it. Similarly, like the payment posting, we also have a flagship product called Oscar in the coding space, where it actually predicts the medical coding. In the absence of an automated platforms, the human coder would have been predicting and doing this manual coding like they would have done in the usual business process, right? So by having an automated solution, which actually helps in reducing your overall cycle time and also helps to improve your collections and collect your money faster. So and as I said, more important on these automated workflow solutions, as we do have some smart workflow solutions where it may be partially automated, not fully automated. In the case of account receivable, which is again one of our service line within your RCM. So these workflow solutions, be it manual workflow solutions or an automated workflow solutions, it actually helps in collecting the digital data. So the data becomes part of your business process, and you are not, depending on a data which is standalone separately or stored separately. Because it gets collected as part of your process, either through your automated solutions, workflow tools, or your RPA bots, like Abhijay was explaining, which actually helps us in building the analytics, what is required in the RCM space. What you can see on the right-hand side, some of the RCM specific analytical models like claims denial predictive model. You can actually predict which claim could have been denied, right? So that will, if you're focusing on that, that is going to help in the provider to avoid that denial to happen by the payer, so that their revenue is going to be improved or collected at the right time. And similarly, an AR account receivable rework propensity model, how much of rework is there, and you can actually create a propensity model to improve your overall revenue realization. Again, an analytical model. And we can have other prioritization. I've just called out few of the examples here. We can actually have n number of use cases on creating these analytics. As I said, it has become our way of operations in the healthcare BPM industry now, right? Whereas unlike the previous the decades, currently we are actually seeing the big impact of this big data impacting the BPM industries are able to leverage this big data and apply the analytic solutions to drive bigger decisions. Over to you, Amar. I'm done with my.
Oh, thank you very much, Vijayashree. That was fascinating, great insights. Evidently, there's a lot to be said about the healthcare industry and the impact that big data is happening. And frankly, your piece about RCM was a bit of an eye-opener. I did not realize the extent to which that represents a revenue opportunity for this industry. I'm going to ask you one question, and I've got something that you said I want to pick up with the other panelists. And that question is, with the proliferation of data privacy regimes like GDPR, like HIPAA, will our ability to work with big data be constrained in any way, especially in the healthcare space, because you are dealing with patient records? And one of the attendees in the conference has asked the same question: what kind of healthcare data can be shared across providers and hospitals?
See, when it comes to HIPAA compliance and any security compliance, I would say it is actually a myth when we say if it is big data, it is not compliant or it is not secure, right? In fact, more and more adoption of technologies and more adoption of digital data, it is going to be more easier to becoming more secured and compliant, to all these compliance, right? In fact, in the before the digitization days, it would have been more complicated for taking care of your, because it involves a scanning, it involves a reading of images and written papers. The papers are floating around. It is definitely, it would have been a more complicated process to ensure the compliance when it comes to the digital data and the adoption of technologies. And with all the, advancement in the security technologies as well, right? Because nowadays, any database, if you take any cloud service, if you are going to leverage our AWS or the Azure, they are actually providing HIPAA compliant, cloud services, right? If you take any database storage, it comes with your default, in-store and encryption already taken care by the database. So more and more adoption of technology is going to make more the compliance and security aspect more easier. It is not going to be deviating away, because when we say big data, it is not the data is going to be floating around everywhere. It is not going to be in the social media. It is still going to be in the secured network. It is still going to be shared across the providers or hospitals for whom it is actually required to be provided, right? So just because you have a big amount of data, it doesn't mean that it is going to be shared across where it is not supposed to be shared. Right? So in that way, I'm seeing, in fact, more and more advancement of technologies are making our jobs more easier, because the technology is helping us to meet the security and the compliance requirement.
All right, that's good. So I think also what we're seeing, trying to tie this back to what all three of you said, the advent of these automated workflow solutions also reduces the level of risk, right? Because they are designed from the ground up to be secure and have
absolutely. One is automated workflows, and also and also embedding your analytics and your solutions into your workflows and platforms. It is not something you are taking it away, right? That also plays a role.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what I'm going to do is we've got a little over 10 minutes to go, so I'm going to take a few questions from the audience and then bring it back together to connect the dots. So we have Prakash Khatri asking. I think maybe Vijayashree's screen is frozen, so I'm going to bounce this question off Abhijay. The question is, how common are the predictive models or image processing models for AI to diagnose diseases, and prescriptive models for AI to prescribe medicines? So are we there yet, or is it headed in that direction, Abhijay?
Hey, Amar, even I got thrown out of the Zoom. I just joined back on phone. Am I audible?
You are
loud and clear. Did you get my question?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? I just got thrown out of Zoom right now. I mean, I'm hearing on the phone now.
Yeah, no, we can hear you. So the question from Prakash Khatri is, how common are the predictive models or image processing models for AI that diagnose the disease? And what about the prescriptive models for AI to prescribe medicines? So all the doctor needs to do is review and approve. So are we there yet? Are we heading in that direction? And will things like 5G accelerate that process? But once again, I'm asking you to take out your crystal ball and just give us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we got an opportunity very recently, just a month back, not in US market, but in the Middle East market, where they're looking for a geo-wide antimicrobial stewardship solution, right? And what this is all about is in the wake of all the super bugs that are coming in, and the antimicrobial or the antibacterial solution, antimicrobial medicines, they are becoming more and more ineffective. They're trying to help the doctors at the time of prescribing with evidence-based guidelines, plus some level of AI to help them choose the right antibacterial agent to prescribe to the patient. So the patient already you would have in your EMR with all kinds of conditions. You would have a database where the solution would have seen thousands of such patients who have the same conditions and what antibacterial agent actually worked. There are tons of antibacterial agent that you can prescribe to a patient, but which one is the right one and which one does not promote the condition of the antimicrobial agents not working and becoming actually potentially more dangerous. I just got the opportunity to work with the medical panel. I would say we are still skeptic. Doctors are still skeptic to order something straight coming out of the system. I heard that, I saw that as well. But are the solutions ready? I would say that there have been some very serious work that has gone in the AI within medicine, and the predictive power. And you would have also seen a lot of literature coming in that the AI that is able to look at the lung images is able to predict pneumonia from COVID far better than a trained physician. But the question becomes that if you are the patient and you are not having a doctor on the other side, and all you are seeing is literally an agent just spitting out from an AI engine your prescription, would you take it? So it is not just about the doctors. I think the patients also will feel a lot more secure if you have somebody wearing that white coat and on the other side prescribing things for you. But technology wise, I would say that we are like 70-80% there. A lot of work needs to be done in educating the community, the clinical community, as well as the patients. I mean, there's so many things. If you go back in the airlines industry, who would have thought that we would get into planes which self-drive, right, with self-pilot, right, without the pilot touching anything for hours and hours and hours, right? We have accepted it over a period of time. I think in our lifetime we will definitely see that. In our lifetime, we'll definitely see that medicines are completely prescribed by machines, the best medicine, and we will take it. But I don't think this is actually right there adopted well.
So, but like you said, the technology exists. It's about people wrapping their heads around the concept. But once again, 2 years ago, we weren't familiar with having a machine in our house that when you said, hello, Alexa, that the machine responds. So maybe it's a matter of time before people get a little more comfortable with that. So thank you for that, Abhijit. I want to ask, I want to pick up a question once again from the audience this time, and this is from Felix Jeffrey. Question is, how do you, and this is for Dr. Muthu, how do you manage better or compromising customer data?
Can you repeat the question?
I think you'd answer.
Your question is not clear. Can you repeat?
Yeah, how do you maintain agility? Yeah, how do you maintain agility without compromising on customer data and at the same time provide cost?
Okay, so okay, fine. So this is basically consulting, and mostly what I mean by consulting,
I think that's
better control of operation. Yeah, if I understand the question correct.
We lost you. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I audible? Hello? Yeah, am I audible?
You are cut. Yes, now you are. You're cutting in and out, but you're audible now. Tell me.
Okay, so basically this is something to do with the consulting kind of an activity where you would understand the process. So if I see the question right, better control of operations, and we maintain the agility without compromising on customer data. So if that is a question, this control of operations is one component, maintaining agility is the second component, compromising on without compromising on customer data is a third component to provide cost-effective solutions. So we have to break this down into three components. So the first component, control of operations, that's more of a BPM operation, which calls for understanding on the floor, understanding on what is happening on the floor, and then identifying, getting into a kind of a gap understanding on what exactly happens in reality, so that you look for opportunities, identify those opportunities, and then optimize it so that you see the revenue flowing back in. So that's how I would see the first part of the question. And when you say agility, because agility again gets into the cost component as one of the elements. So when I break down the first part, automatically the second part gets adjusted, and whatever is the third part, that is without compromising the customer data, because customer data again is critical. So then we try to go move into PII components and then isolate what is relevant and what is not relevant, or go for some other filters on top. Thereby, you are able to also address a third component. So, for example, a couple of customers where we were able to do some good work for a few customers where right on the production floor, we had some critical data which was moving out. I'm talking about multiple industries like automobile or any other manufacturing industry where this volume of work which moves out, volume of data which moves out, it has to be captured in real time. We study that for a period of 1 month to 3 or 4 months, and then you optimize it because you see the swarm intelligence which is coming in. The IoT data is now aggregated, and you see the swarm intelligence, the collective intelligence, then you try to optimize. So we were pretty successful in getting this implemented in at least a couple of manufacturing companies.
All right. Thank you for that, Dr. Muthu. And yes, there were three components. It's not necessarily as simple as we make it sound. All right. We're about at the top of the 90 minutes. So I'm just going to try and connect a few dots and bring it to a close. I want to ask each of you one question. What are the things that BPO companies need to do? Each of you, give me just one top of your mind. What's the biggest priority for you for us as an industry to take advantage of the fact that we're at a level of maturity with big data. Now it's about what are we going to do with it. So I'm starting with Vijayashree. What do you think is truly important for us as an industry to focus on?
I would say outcome-based analytics, right? And clearly focusing on how can you can apply analytics, to improve efficiency internally, to improve efficiency for your customer, or you can improve efficiency for your end customer, right? So it should be more, a focus for the end customer. So the outcome where it is finally hitting. So outcome these analytics will actually help. Then that should be the primary focus. That will actually indirectly drive the internal efficiencies across the different players. But the end customers' outcome improved through analytics should be the primary goal.
Oh, that's interesting, because it's all connecting on at the platform, right? So that's good. So Abhijay, what according to you is the priority?
I think it's about coming up with new business models. I think now, for the first time, the BPM companies are having so much data for any industry, right? Not just healthcare, any industry, and almost like 20, 25 customers' data, or even more at times in their database. It's about time that we take a leap forward, try to mine the data, and come up with absolutely new business models on the paradigm of data sharing, take back new ideas to the industry policymakers, and ensure that we come up with some business models which lowers the cost of the industry. It's a huge win-win for BPM companies as well. They're seen as industry innovators, and it's going to be also beneficial to the end customers. So that's, for me, is the next big thing for the next 10 years, which the BPM companies really need to focus on.
Thank you. I just wonder whether it will take 10 years given the rate of the current rate of change. So, but yeah, that's fascinating. And Dr. Muthu, what about you? What should we be focused on?
I mean, in terms of the question, in terms of
for the BPM industry to take advantage of the fact that we're at a majority level with big data, what are things we should focus on to truly?
New business models. I would put it again back to new business models, because that is actually opening up new opportunities, because you have to come out of the existing mindset. The existing mindset, if it is going to be there, and then we'll be going back in the same cycle. So a couple of new innovations which are again coming up in the same space is one of them I would call as cursive handwriting scanning. That's another area which is shaping up in the BPO space, because that's a new thought, a new line of business where you see paper documents which are moving in with handwritten material. So handwritten material has opened up a new area, new image processing, and a new kind of methodologies, a new kind of metrics. So just an example of cursive handwriting. You can look at multiple such new business models, which is actually opening up the future for us for the next couple of years. That's going to, people who are moving towards new innovations and new business models by aggregating data on a platform and understanding the analytics will be able to successfully come out.
Thank you, Dr. Muthukumaran. So, and once again, I think just to connect a few dots, it's been a phenomenally fascinating 90 minutes, and I just talked about a few things, right? Number one is, what's clear is that big data, the sensible use of big data produces better customer outcomes. That's just, I think that's a given. I think the future, to Abhijay's and all the panelists' point, the future depends on new data models, on new business models. The future depends on a data sharing paradigm, and I think the future will be all about contextual, embedded, outcome-based analytics, and I think that's where we're headed. So I think also that with that, if we focus on all these, the future could not possibly be any brighter. Thank you very much for your time, Vijayashree, Abhijay, Dr. Muthu. Thank you, NASSCOM, for the opportunity, and for the audience, thank you for dialing in. I hope you found the session productive and useful. Over to you, Guhan.
Thank you so much, Amar. Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear.
Clear. Great. What a session we had. That was a real great amount of insight that we had. And it was actually like reading a lot of insights, a lot of articles at just one go. It was like that. And before we sign off, I would like to thank each and every panel, Dr. Muthu, Amar, Abhijay, Vijayashree, and It's a great amount of insight. In fact, it was like a big data of insight that we had. And most importantly, a very big thanks to the enthusiast of big data participants who has joined this session. And I hope you all enjoyed hearing them. And I'm sure to have much more sessions like this on the same lines in the upcoming days. I would also like to hear your feedback and suggestions. You can always write to us for any of your suggestions as what kind of topics that you would look like. And finally, request you all to follow all the NASSCOM communications and follow the website of NASSCOM, which will have the complete updates about all the NASSCOM events and reports and much more insight. And thank you all for joining us, and have a great week ahead. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.